When was the last time you pretended to be fine while everything inside you was collapsing? That moment, standing in front of the mirror, practicing your smile before facing the world, it reveals something profound about your existence. You've been acting like you've already won, haven't you? Displaying confidence while doubt consumes you, showing strength while feeling hollow inside. This isn't just your story, it's the human story. Carl Jung, one of history's greatest psychological minds, would call this wearing the mask, the persona we create to hide our true selves from the world. But what happens when you wear that mask for so long that you forget your own face? The truth is uncomfortable. Most people never become who they truly are because they're too busy being who they think they should be. Ask yourself, what victory are you chasing, and whose definition of winning are you using? Your shadow, Jung's term for the parts of yourself you've denied and hidden away, holds the answer. It contains everything you've deemed unacceptable, everything you refuse to acknowledge about yourself. The shadow doesn't disappear when ignored. It grows stronger. Have you noticed how irritated you become at the arrogance in others while being blind to your own? How you judge someone's failure while fearfully avoiding any risk of your own? This is projection, seeing in others what you can't bear to see in yourself. What if I told you that the qualities that irritate you most in others are precisely the ones you've disowned within yourself? Your competitive nature, your need to win, your desire for recognition. These aren't random, they're compensations for deeper wounds. The constant need to prove yourself stems from something unhealed within. The shadow of victory is failure, not the failure that comes from trying and falling short, but the failure of never truly trying at all, of playing small, of choosing safety over authenticity. Jung believed that what you resist persists. The more you run from your shadow, the more it chases you. The more you deny your wounds, the more they bleed into every aspect of your life. The moment you realize this is the moment everything changes. Your unconscious mind, that vast reservoir of thoughts, memories and impulses beyond your awareness, is constantly influencing your behavior. It's why you sabotage yourself just before success, why you push away love when it finally arrives, why you feel like an imposter even when you've earned your place. This isn't coincidental, it's psychological. The past doesn't stay in the past, it lives in you. Every criticism you internalized as a child, every time you were taught that your worth depends on your achievements, every moment you learned to value the outcome over the process. These experiences created the internal weather you live with daily. The storms of anxiety before presentations, the cold fronts of detachment in relationships, the fog of confusion when facing important decisions. You've been fighting these internal elements alone. The battlefield of the mind is where victory and defeat are truly determined. Not in the external achievements the world can see, but in the private wars nobody witnesses. The truth is that the victory you seek externally can only be won internally. Consider how often you've achieved what you wanted only to feel nothing. The promotion, the relationship, the recognition, the achievement created a momentary high, then left you hungry for more. This isn't because you're greedy or ungrateful, it's because you're seeking external solutions to internal problems. Jung would say you're searching for wholeness in fragments. The unconscious doesn't speak in words, but in symbols and patterns. Pay attention to your recurring dreams, the coincidences that feel meaningful, the situations that repeatedly manifest in your life. These aren't random, they're breadcrumbs leading back to yourself. Have you noticed how you recreate the same situations with different people, the same conflicts in different workplaces, the same patterns in different relationships? This is your unconscious mind attempting to heal old wounds by recreating the conditions that caused them, hoping for a different outcome. It's trying to resolve what remains unresolved. Ask yourself, what pain am I still carrying? What victory would actually feel like enough? The mirror doesn't lie, but your perception might. When you look at yourself, are you seeing clearly or through the distorted lens of your inner critic? That critical isn't yours. It's an internalized composite of everyone who ever made you feel insufficient. Your need to win often stems from a fear of being unworthy if you lose. This fear didn't originate with you. It was given to you. The moment you realize that your worth isn't determined by your achievements is the moment you truly begin to live. Jung's concept of the shadow teaches us that integration, not elimination, is the goal. You can't cut off parts of yourself and become whole. You must acknowledge all that you are, the light and the dark, the strong and the weak, the certain and the doubtful. What you're seeking isn't victory in the conventional sense. It's psychological integration, the reunification of all the fragmented parts of yourself. The constant striving, the endless pursuit of more, the feeling that you're only as good as your last accomplishment. These aren't motivations. They're symptoms of disintegration. The true self exists beneath these patterns, waiting to be recognized. When you understand that winning isn't about conquering the world but about coming home to yourself, everything shifts. The external markers of success lose their tyrannical hold over your sense of worth. This doesn't mean abandoning ambition or accepting mediocrity. It means pursuing goals from a place of wholeness rather than lack, creating from abundance rather than scarcity, living from truth rather than fear. Your shadow contains not only your darkness, but also your unrealized potential. The talents you've dismissed, the dreams you've abandoned, the parts of yourself you've sacrificed to fit in. These aren't lost. They're waiting to be reclaimed. Jung believed that what makes the shadow so powerful is that it contains our unlived life, all the paths not taken, all the aspects of ourselves we've denied expression. The tragedy isn't having flaws, it's pretending not to have them. The victory isn't in perfection, it's in integration. What if I told you that your imperfections aren't obstacles to overcome but gateways to becoming whole? The masks you wear, the competent professional, the perfect parent, the supportive friend, the knowledgeable expert, serve a purpose. But they become prisons when you forget they're just roles, not your essence. Notice how exhausting it is to maintain these facades, how much energy it takes to pretend. This exhaustion isn't because you're weak, it's because living divided from yourself requires constant effort. Integration happens when you stop fighting yourself. When the achiever within you makes peace with the part that needs rest. When the strong self embraces the vulnerable self. When the adult self comforts the wounded child within. This internal reconciliation creates a power nothing external can match. The arena where this transformation occurs isn't visible to others. It happens in quiet moments of self-reflection, in the courage to face what you've been avoiding, in the willingness to feel what you've been numbing. Ask yourself, what parts of me have I been rejecting? What aspects of myself am I afraid to acknowledge? Your answer reveals the path forward. Jung's concept of projection teaches us that the world serves as a mirror, reflecting back what remains unconscious within us. The qualities you admire in others point to your unrealized potential. The traits you despise in others highlight your disowned aspects. This isn't theoretical, it's intensely practical. The colleague whose confidence infuriates you is activating your disowned self-assurance. The friend whose vulnerability makes you uncomfortable is highlighting your armored heart. The public figure whose success triggers your envy is reflecting your unlived ambitions. These reactions aren't random, they're revelatory. When you catch yourself in judgment, ask, what is this showing me about myself? The answer often comes as an uncomfortable recognition, an aspect of yourself you've been denying. This recognition isn't the end, it's the beginning. The shadow doesn't dissolve through intellectual understanding alone. It transforms through conscious acknowledgement and expression, through bringing what's hidden into the light. This process feels counterintuitive. You've spent years burying these disowned parts, and now you're being asked to excavate them. The resistance you feel is natural. It's the ego's attempt to maintain the illusion of control, but freedom lies beyond this resistance. The truth is that acting like you've already won isn't about pretending, it's about recognizing that the victory already exists within you, waiting to be claimed. Jung would say that the goal isn't becoming something new, but rather uncovering who you've always been beneath the conditioning, the adaptations, the protective layers. The unconscious patterns driving your need to win weren't consciously chosen by you. They were adaptive responses to earlier environments where achievement meant safety, recognition meant love, and winning meant survival. These patterns served you once. They helped you navigate difficult circumstances. They protected you when you were vulnerable. Honor them for that service while recognizing that you're no longer in those circumstances. You're no longer that child seeking approval. You're no longer that teenager trying to prove your worth. You're no longer that young adult, desperate to find your place. You've evolved, but your patterns may not have evolved with you. This recognition creates space for conscious choice rather than unconscious reaction. The shadow's longest and darkest at noon, when the light is strongest. Similarly, your shadow aspects become most apparent when you're closest to your authentic power. This is why self-sabotage often strikes just as you approach success. It's not a sign that you're broken. It's an invitation to integration. The process of psychological integration isn't comfortable. It requires confronting what you've avoided, feeling what you've numbed, acknowledging what you've denied. This confrontation creates temporary discomfort, but permanent liberation. The transformation begins with awareness. Notice the patterns without judgment. Observe the reactions without identification. Witness the thoughts without believing them all. This conscious witnessing creates space between you and the patterns that have defined your life. In this space, new possibilities emerge. What if I told you that the victory you seek isn't found in conquering the world, but in coming home to yourself? The external achievements you pursue, the promotion, the recognition, the wealth, the influence, aren't inherently problematic. They become problematic only when mistaken for sources of worth rather than expressions of it. Jung believed that what you seek externally is a reflection of what you long for internally. The power you chase in the world mirrors your desire for inner sovereignty. The recognition you crave from others echoes your need for self-recognition. Acknowledging this doesn't diminish ambition, it purifies it. When you pursue goals from wholeness rather than lack, the entire quality of your striving transforms. You no longer need the outcome to feel complete. You're no longer desperate for validation. You're no longer defined by results. This shift doesn't happen instantly. It emerges gradually through consistent awareness and integration, through small moments of choosing authenticity over approval, truth over comfort, growth over safety. The shadow of victory contains the fear of failure, and beneath that, the fear of unworthiness. When brought into consciousness, these fears lose their unconscious power over your choices, your relationships, your life. You begin to act not from fear but from freedom. The roles you play, professional, parent, partner, friend, remain, but they're inhabited differently. They become expressions of your authentic self, rather than replacements for it. They serve your life, rather than defining it. This integration creates a presence that's unmistakable to others. They may not understand what's different about you, but they feel it. The congruence between your outer expression and inner reality creates a resonance that words can't capture. The moment you realize that the parts of yourself you've been hiding contain precisely what you need to become whole is the moment everything changes. Jung would say that the disowned aspects of yourself don't disappear when rejected. They go underground and influence your life from the shadows. By reclaiming these aspects, you reclaim your power, your potential, your birthright of wholeness. The process isn't about becoming someone new. It's about becoming who you've always been beneath the adaptations and armor. It's about retrieving the parts of yourself that were abandoned along the way. This retrieval isn't sentimental, it's revolutionary. Each aspect you reclaim adds to your completeness. Each fragment you integrate contributes to your wholeness. Each shadow you acknowledge transforms from liability to asset. The journey isn't linear. There will be resistance, internal and external. The old patterns won't relinquish their hold without a struggle. The familiar, even when painful, exerts a powerful gravitational pull. This resistance isn't failure, it's feedback. It reveals where integration is most needed, where old beliefs are most entrenched, where transformation will be most liberating. The shadow of victory contains not just the fear of failure, but also the fear of success. The unconscious understanding that becoming whole will change everything, your relationships, your work, your life. This fear is valid. Transformation is disruptive before it's liberating. Ask yourself, what am I afraid would happen if I actually became whole, if I integrated all parts of myself, if I actualized my full potential? Your answer reveals the final barriers to integration. The unconscious mind communicates through symbols rather than statements. The recurring dream, the unexpected emotion, the coincidental encounter, these aren't random. They're communications from parts of yourself seeking integration. Learning to read these symbols is learning to understand your deeper self. The journey of integration takes courage. Not the flashy courage celebrated in stories, but the quiet courage of facing yourself honestly, of acknowledging what you've denied, of feeling what you've avoided. This courage creates the foundation for genuine confidence, not the brittle confidence built on achievement or approval, but the lasting confidence rooted in self-knowledge and self-acceptance. The inner conflicts that have consumed your energy between ambition and peace, between connection and independence, between security and freedom, transform through integration. They're no longer battles to be won, but polarities to be transcended. This transcendence creates an internal harmony that external circumstances can't disrupt. The true victory isn't found in achieving more, but in needing less to feel complete. Not in accumulating accomplishments, but in recognizing your inherent worth. Not in winning every battle, but in choosing which battles truly matter. The truth is that acting like you've already won doesn't mean pretending. It means recognizing that the victory has always been within your reach, waiting for you to claim it through integration rather than achievement. Jung believed that individuation, becoming your unique, authentic self through integration, is the ultimate human task. Not a luxury for the privileged few, but the birthright and responsibility of everyone. This process continues throughout life, revealing ever deeper layers of the shadow, ever greater possibilities for wholeness. It's not a destination, but a journey of continuous discovery and integration. The shadow of victory is transformed when you recognize that true winning isn't about conquest, but completion. Not about proving your worth, but expressing it. Not about receiving validation, but offering your authentic contribution. This integration creates an internal harmony that external circumstances can't disrupt. But how does this transformation actually happen? What does it look like to enter the arena where your shadows and your light finally meet? The archetypal hero's journey that Jung identified isn't just found in ancient myths. It's happening within you right now. You stand at the threshold of becoming, caught between who you've been and who you truly are. What holds you back from crossing this threshold? The archetypal forces within you, the warrior, the caregiver, the creator, the sage, exist in everyone. These universal patterns, what Jung called archetypes, aren't just abstract concepts. They're living energies seeking expression through your unique life. But when these archetypes remain unconscious, they control you rather than serve you. The warrior becomes aggression without purpose. The caregiver becomes self-sacrifice without boundaries. The creator becomes perfectionism without completion. The sage becomes intellectualization without wisdom. What if I told you that these archetypal energies, when integrated consciously, become the very forces that transform your life? The arena of transformation isn't external. It exists within the territory of your consciousness, where your highest aspirations meet your deepest fears, where your greatest strengths encounter your most vulnerable weaknesses. Most people avoid this arena entirely. They construct elaborate lives designed to never face these inner confrontations. They stay busy. They stay distracted. They stay safe. But safety costs everything. The price of avoiding this inner arena is steep. A life half-lived, potential unrealized, authenticity sacrificed for security. The very victories you chase externally, recognition, achievement, status, are pale substitutes for the victory of becoming whole. Jung believed that individuation, the process of becoming psychologically individual, is your birthright and responsibility, not just personal development, but psychological necessity. What prevents this individuation? What blocks this natural unfolding? The fear of what you might find if you look too deeply, the comfort of familiar limitations, even when they cause pain, the unconscious vow to remain loyal to old identities, even when they've become prisons. These are not walls to be demolished, but thresholds to be crossed thoughtfully. Ask yourself, what parts of me have I kept in exile? What aspects of my nature have I disowned to maintain the illusion of control? The integration of these exiled parts doesn't happen through force, but through recognition, through dialogue, through relationship. Not conquest, but conversation. Your conscious mind, the part you identify as I, is only the gatekeeper to a vast inner kingdom populated by aspects of yourself waiting to be acknowledged. Some bear gifts, others bear wounds. All bear wisdom if you listen. This inner listening isn't passive. It's the most active stance you can take toward your own development. The paradox of transformation is that it requires both will and surrender. The will to face what you've avoided, the surrender of believing you already know what you'll find. Most approaches to personal development fail because they attempt to build new structures on old foundations. They add without addressing. They acquire without integrating. They change behaviors without transforming the consciousness that creates those behaviors. Jung would say this approach is destined for failure. True change isn't additive. It's alchemical. The alchemical transformation happens in the crucible of conscious awareness, in that space where you observe without judgment, where you witness without immediate reaction, where you allow without premature resolution. This space feels uncomfortable precisely because it's unfamiliar. You've been trained to fix, to solve, to overcome, not to witness, to allow, to integrate. The truth is that transformation doesn't happen by force of will alone, but through the paradoxical power of acceptance. The battlefield metaphor for psychological growth. exists for a reason. There is conflict involved, not between you and the world, but between different aspects of yourself. Between who you've been and who you're becoming. Between what feels safe and what's actually true. These inner conflicts aren't problems to be eliminated, but tensions to be transcended. Not through compromise, but through a higher integration that honors the truth at both poles. Your desire for security and your longing for freedom. Your need for connection and your requirement for independence. Your ambition for achievement and your hunger for peace. These aren't either-or propositions, but both and possibilities waiting to be realized through psychological integration. The inner arena where this integration happens isn't conceptual, it's experiential. It occurs in moments of genuine self-confrontation. When you finally acknowledge the envy beneath your criticism, the longing beneath your detachment, the fear beneath your control. These recognitions aren't comfortable, but they're liberating. Jung's concept of the shadow teaches not just that you have disowned aspects, but that these aspects contain essential energy for your wholeness. The shadow isn't just darkness, it's unrealized potential. The aggression you've denied contains your healthy assertiveness. The selfishness you've rejected contains your necessary self-care. The vulnerability you've armored against contains your capacity for intimacy. These aren't flaws to be fixed, but fragmented parts waiting to be reclaimed. What if I told you that your greatest strength lies hidden within what you've considered your greatest weakness? The psychological masks you wear, the personas Jung identified, were developed for survival, for acceptance, for love. They're not false in themselves. They become false when mistaken for the totality of who you are. The professional mask, the relational mask, the social mask, the spiritual mask. Each serves a purpose in its domain. The problem isn't having these masks but being unconscious of them, believing they are you rather than expressions of aspects of you. True authenticity isn't the absence of these masks, but the conscious choice of which mask serves the moment, held with the awareness that none of them defines you completely. This conscious relationship with your personas creates freedom where there was once unconscious compulsion. The arena of transformation requires courage, but not the kind celebrated in action movies. Not the courage of conquest, but the courage of vulnerability. Not of force, but of radical honesty. This courage manifests in quiet moments, when you admit what you really feel despite the risk of judgment. When you express what you truly need despite the possibility of rejection. When you reveal what you honestly think, despite the danger of conflict. These moments, seemingly small, are revolutionary acts of psychological liberation. The moment you realize that authenticity isn't a fixed state, but a continuous choice, is the moment you begin living from freedom rather than fear. Jung recognized that transformation doesn't proceed in a straight line. It moves in spirals, revisiting old territories with new awareness, encountering familiar challenges with expanded consciousness. This spiral nature of growth explains why you find yourself facing the same issues repeatedly, albeit at different levels. It's not because you've failed, but because you're being invited into deeper integration. Each turn of the spiral offers an opportunity to respond differently, to choose consciousness where there was once reactivity, presence where there was once pattern, freedom where there was once compulsion. The tempo of this spiral varies. There are periods of rapid transformation followed by plateaus of integration, breakthroughs followed by consolidation, insights followed by embodiment. This rhythm isn't random, it's the natural cadence of psychological development, expansion and contraction, differentiation and integration, death and rebirth. Honoring this rhythm prevents the frustration of expecting linear progress in a spiral process. Ask yourself, Where am I rushing the process of transformation? Where am I resisting the natural rhythm of my own development? The inner conflicts that seem most personal are often universal. The tension between security and growth, between belonging and individuality, between control and surrender. These aren't unique to you. They're inherent in the human condition. This recognition doesn't diminish your struggles, but contextualizes them. You're not alone in these tensions. You're participating in the archetypal human journey of becoming. Jung would say that acknowledging this archetypal dimension transforms how you relate to your challenges. They're no longer just personal problems, but universal initiations, opportunities to contribute to the collective evolution of consciousness through your individual transformation. This perspective shifts suffering from meaningless to meaningful. The metaphor of the inner arena implies confrontation, but the quality of this confrontation matters. It's not conquest through force, but resolution through awareness. Not subjugation, but inclusion. Not victory over parts of yourself, but cooperation among all parts. This inclusive approach creates internal harmony where there was once discord. The truth is that the transformation you seek doesn't require you to become someone new. It requires you to finally meet yourself as you truly are. The core Jungian practice of active imagination, engaging consciously with the symbols, images and figures that emerge from your unconscious, provides a practical method for this inner work. Through this practice, you enter into relationship with aspects of yourself that have remained unconscious. You discover that what seemed like obstacles were actually allies in disguise. What appeared as enemies were messengers bearing essential gifts. This shift from opposition to relationship characterizes mature psychological development. The arena of transformation contains not just conflict, but also profound creativity. As fragmented aspects of yourself reintegrate, energy previously consumed by inner division becomes available for creation, connection, contribution. This explains why psychological integration often coincides with creative breakthrough, relational depth, and vocational clarity. These aren't separate developments but manifestations of the same underlying process, the unification of your psychological forces, the shadows cast by your light, the aspects of yourself you've denied to maintain a particular self-image, contain precisely what you need for the next phase of your evolution. The perfectionist needs the spontaneity they've rejected. The pleaser needs the boundaries they've abandoned. The achiever needs the receptivity they've dismissed. These complementary qualities aren't opposed, they're completion awaiting integration. What if I told you that the qualities you most admire in others are already within you, waiting to be acknowledged and expressed? Jung observed that most psychological suffering stems not from external circumstances, but from the individual's relationship with themselves, from inner division, from disowned aspects, from the gap between the person they present to the world and the person they know themselves to be. This observation places the possibility of healing within reach, regardless of external conditions, not through denial of difficulties, but through a transformed relationship with them. The arena where this transformation occurs exists in ordinary moments, when you notice judgment arising and choose curiosity instead, when you feel reactive and before responding, when you recognize an old pattern emerging and introduce a new possibility. These aren't dramatic moments. They won't be celebrated publicly or recognized externally, but they constitute the actual territory where transformation happens. The path of individuation that Jung described isn't about becoming extraordinary. It's about becoming authentically yourself, with all the limitations and gifts that entails, not superhuman, but fully human. This full humanity includes your wounds, your failures, your contradictions, not as problems to be solved, but as aspects to be integrated into a more complex, nuanced, and complete sense of self. The moment you stop trying to be perfect and start trying to be whole is the moment your authentic power begins to emerge. Jung believed that neurosis, psychological suffering, results from the one-sided development of personality, from emphasizing certain qualities while suppressing others, from identifying with certain aspects while disowning others. The remedy isn't balance in the conventional sense of moderation, but wholeness, the inclusion of all aspects in right relationship to each other and to the whole. This wholeness doesn't eliminate tension, it transforms it from destructive to creative, from division to dynamism, from conflict to complexity. The arena of transformation contains not just personal elements but collective ones, the cultural conditioning you've internalized, the family patterns you've inherited, the societal expectations you've absorbed. These aren't separate from your individual psychology, they're interwoven with it. The personal and collective shadows interact, reinforce, and transform together. Recognizing this interconnection prevents the trap of excessive individualism without falling into pure determinism. You're both formed by collective forces and capable of transforming your relationship to them. This recognition is liberating. You're neither merely a product of conditioning nor entirely self-created. You exist in the creative tension between influence and agency, between inheritance and choice. Ask yourself, what inherited patterns am I ready to transform? What collective shadows am I willing to face within myself? The psychological integration that Jung described isn't merely an internal process. It manifests in how you engage with the world, in the quality of your relationships, in the nature of your work, in the character of your contribution. As inner divisions heal, external expressions naturally transform, not through forced change, but as a natural outgrowth of internal integration. The work becomes less about what you do, and more about who you're being while doing it, less about achieving specific outcomes, and more about bringing your whole self to each moment. This shift doesn't diminish results. It enhances them by aligning your actions with your authentic nature, rather than with compensatory drives or external expectations. The arena of psychological transformation contains not just struggle, but also profound joy, the joy of becoming more fully yourself, of experiencing the satisfaction of internal congruence, of feeling the aliveness that emerges when you're no longer divided against yourself. This joy isn't dependent on external circumstances. It arises from within as a natural expression of psychological wholeness. The truth is that the greatest victory isn't winning in the world's eyes, but winning the inner battle for authentic self-expression. Jung observed that many people approach the second half of life with the same strategies that served the first half, not recognizing that the tasks have fundamentally changed. The first half often focuses on establishing identity, achievement, and adaptation to external demands. The second half calls for depth, meaning, and integration. This shift requires new approaches, from accumulation to discernment, from achievement to contribution, from adaptation to authenticity. These aren't rejections of earlier values, but transformations of them through the integration of their complementary aspects. The archetypal journey through these life phases isn't optional. It's built into human development. Resisting this natural evolution creates suffering. Engaging consciously with it creates meaning. The transformation process Jung described happens through paradox rather than linear progression. You become strong by acknowledging weakness. You find security by embracing uncertainty. You discover freedom by accepting limitation. These paradoxes can't be resolved intellectually. They must be lived into, experienced rather than understood, embodied rather than conceptualized. What if I told you that the aspects of yourself you've been fighting are actually essential allies in your evolution? The integration of shadow aspects, those qualities you've denied, suppressed, or disowned, doesn't happen all at once. It occurs gradually, aspect by aspect, layer by layer. This gradual nature explains why transformation feels like both a sudden breakthrough and an ongoing process. The insight may arrive in an instant, while the integration unfolds over time. The wisdom traditions Jung studied recognized this dual nature of transformation, the moment of awakening and the practice of embodiment, the illumination and the integration, the realization and the actualization. Honoring both aspects prevents the common pitfalls of either expecting instant total transformation or dismissing profound insights as merely intellectual. The arena where this integration happens isn't separate from daily life. It is daily life approached with consciousness. The ordinary challenges, relationships, and situations you encounter aren't obstacles to transformation but vehicles for it. The difficult conversation becomes an opportunity for authentic expression. The challenging decision becomes a chance for inner alignment. The unexpected loss becomes an invitation to discover what remains when the temporary is stripped away. These aren't spiritual platitudes, but psychological realities when engaged with consciousness. The moment you stop seeing life's challenges as interruptions to your transformation and start recognizing them as the actual path of transformation is the moment everything changes. Jung believed that psychological development naturally moves toward wholeness unless blocked by fear, fixed beliefs, or unconscious patterns. This means the transformation you seek isn't something to be constructed, but something to be allowed, not forced, but facilitated. This facilitation happens through conscious engagement with what arises within and around you, through questioning your assumptions, through examining your reactions, through listening to the feedback life continuously provides. The blocks to this natural unfolding aren't external circumstances, but internal resistances, the fear of who you might become if you fully accept yourself, the comfort of familiar limitations, even when they cause suffering. The unconscious loyalty to outdated self-definitions. Recognizing these resistances brings them from unconscious barriers to conscious material for integration. The individuation process Jung described isn't selfish, it's the foundation for genuine contribution. As you become more fully yourself, you naturally contribute more authentically to the collective. This contribution isn't based on should or ought, but on the natural expression of your integrated being. Not duty but calling, not obligation but authentic response. Ask yourself, what unique contribution emerges when I'm no longer divided against myself? What becomes possible when inner conflict transforms into inner harmony? The psychological masks that once protected you can become conscious tools for engagement with different domains of life. The professional persona, the relational persona, the creative persona, each serves a purpose when consciously held rather than unconsciously identified with. This conscious relationship with your personas creates flexibility where there was once rigidity, choice where there was once compulsion, freedom where there was once limitation. The journey through the arena of transformation isn't about becoming perfect but becoming real, not flawless but genuine, not idealized but integrated. This integration manifests as a particular quality of presence, an authenticity that's palpable to others, even if they can't articulate what's different about you. This presence emerges not from adopting specific behaviors, but from the congruence between your inner and outer worlds, between what you feel and what you express, between who you are and how you live. The truth is that others can sense whether you're acting from integration or division, from wholeness or fragmentation, from authenticity or adaptation. The psychological integration Jung described transforms not just how you see yourself, but how you see others. As you acknowledge your own complexity, you naturally recognize the complexity in those around you. This recognition transforms judgment into curiosity, reactivity into response, fixed perceptions into evolving understanding. These shifts change the quality of your relationships, not through techniques or strategies, but through the natural expression of your more integrated consciousness. The arena of transformation contains not just work, but also play, not just seriousness, but also joy, not just effort, but also grace. The playful aspect of transformation is often overlooked, yet it's essential. Play creates the experimental space where new possibilities can emerge, where fixed patterns can loosen, where creativity can flourish. This play isn't frivolous, it's fundamentally creative. It allows exploration without premature judgment, experimentation without excessive attachment to outcomes, discovery without predetermined destinations. What if I told you that the transformation you seek happens not just through diligent effort, but also through creative play? The individuation journey Jung mapped doesn't end with self-actualization, but extends to what he called self-realization, the recognition of something beyond the personal self that works through the individual for collective evolution. This dimension transforms personal development from potentially narcissistic to inherently connected, from self-focused to self-transcendent, from isolated to interwoven with the larger human story. The arena of transformation thus extends beyond personal psychology to include your relationship with the collective, with nature, with existence itself. This expansion doesn't diminish the importance of personal integration. It provides the context for it. The personal and transpersonal dimensions develop together, each enabling the evolution of the other. As the conscious and unconscious aspects of your psyche enter into relationship, a third thing emerges, what Jung called the transcendent function, not merely the sum of the parts, but something new, born from their interaction. This emergent quality can't be predicted or controlled. It can only be welcomed and integrated as it appears. This emergent quality can't be predicted or controlled. It can only be welcomed and integrated as it appears. When you stand at this threshold between who you've been and who you're becoming, something profound happens. The past that once defined you transforms into the foundation that supports you. Your wounds become sources of wisdom. Your struggles become wellsprings of compassion. Your failures become essential steps in your evolution. This alchemical transformation doesn't erase the past, it redeems it. The truth is that nothing in your experience has been wasted. Every challenge, every setback, every apparent failure was preparing you for this moment of integration. Jung recognized that suffering without meaning creates despair, but suffering with meaning creates growth. The meaning doesn't exist in the suffering itself, but in your relationship to it, in how you interpret and integrate the experience. This redemptive perspective isn't about denying pain or minimizing trauma. It's about recognizing that even the darkest experiences contain the seeds of transformation when approached with consciousness. The practical path towards psychological liberation begins with radical honesty, not just with others, but with yourself. This honesty requires courage because it means acknowledging what you've denied, feeling what you've numbed, expressing what you've suppressed. But this courage creates freedom where there was once constraint. The first step is simply noticing, becoming aware of the patterns, reactions and assumptions that have operated unconsciously. This noticing happens without judgment, without immediate attempt to change, without premature solution, just awareness. This awareness itself is transformative. What you observe with consciousness begins to shift without forced intervention. The light of awareness naturally dissolves unconscious patterns that can only operate in darkness. Ask yourself, what patterns am I now conscious of that were previously unconscious? What reactions am I now witnessing that previously controlled me? The process continues with acceptance, not resignation, but acknowledgement of what is. This acceptance doesn't mean approving or condoning, but simply recognizing reality without resistance. This acceptance creates space where there was once constriction, possibility where there was once fixation, choice where there was once compulsion. From this space of awareness and acceptance, integration naturally unfolds. The disowned aspects of yourself, both shadow and gold, begin to be recognized, reclaimed, incorporated into your conscious identity. This integration manifests as increased internal congruence and external authenticity. The gap between who you are and how you appear narrows. The energy previously consumed by maintaining this gap becomes available for creation, connection, contribution. The power of acting as if, directly related to the title, "Act Like You Already Won," becomes transformative when understood psychologically. This isn't pretense or fake it till you make it. It's embodying your future self now. Jung would recognize this as working with the archetypal dimension, stepping into a larger pattern that reshapes your individual expression. When you act from your integrated self, the self that has acknowledged its shadows and reclaimed its gold, you're not pretending, you're prophesying, not performing but becoming. What if I told you that acting like you've already won isn't deception but declaration, a statement to your nervous system, your unconscious mind, and the world about who you truly are? This declaration isn't about external victory, but internal reconciliation. Not about having more, but being whole. Not about appearing successful, but embodying authenticity. The practical expression of this embodiment happens through small, consistent choices. Choosing vulnerability when you would typically armor, expressing truth when you would usually accommodate, setting boundaries when you would normally please, taking risks when you would characteristically play safe. These choices aren't random. They emerge from your growing awareness of your patterns and your commitment to integration. Each choice creates a micro-shift in your neurology, your psychology, your reality. These micro-shifts accumulate, creating significant transformation, not through dramatic revolution but through consistent evolution. The process isn't always comfortable. Integration often involves discomfort, the natural disorientation that comes with growth, with changing patterns, with evolving identity. This discomfort isn't a sign that something's wrong, it's confirmation that something's changing, not evidence of failure but of transformation in process. The moment you recognize discomfort as a necessary part of growth, rather than something to be avoided, is the moment your capacity for transformation expands exponentially. Jung observed that most people are willing to change only when the pain of remaining the same exceeds the pain of transformation. But conscious evolution means choosing growth, not from desperation, but from inspiration. Not because you must, but because you may. This conscious choice accelerates integration because it comes from freedom rather than compulsion, from possibility rather than necessity, from vision rather than avoidance. The path of transformation involves specific psychological territories that Jung mapped: confronting your shadows, the aspects of yourself you've denied or rejected, differentiating from collective expectations that don't align with your authentic nature, integrating the contrasexual aspects of your psyche, the anima in men, the animus in women, encountering the self, the organizing center of your psyche beyond the ego. Each territory contains challenges and gifts, obstacles and opportunities, struggles and revelations. Navigating these territories requires both courage and compassion. The courage to face what you've avoided, the compassion to embrace what you've rejected, including your own humanity. The truth is that transformation occurs not through overcoming your humanity, but through fully embracing it with all its limitations, contradictions, and complexities. This full embrace creates freedom not from your humanity, but within it. Not by transcending limitations, but by accepting them as the necessary boundaries that give form to your unique expression. The redemptive perspective on past struggles emerges from this acceptance. Your history isn't a liability to be overcome, but a narrative to be integrated, not something to escape, but something to include in a larger story of becoming. This integration transforms how you relate to your past, present, and future. The past becomes foundation rather than limitation. The present becomes opportunity rather than obligation. The future becomes possibility rather than pressure. These shifts create an expanded sense of time where each moment contains both memory and potential, both history and possibility. The psychological liberation Jung described isn't freedom from all constraints, but freedom within necessary ones, not the absence of limitations, but the acceptance of which limitations are authentic to your nature and which are merely adaptive or imposed. This discernment creates authenticity, alignment with your true nature, rather than with external expectations or compensatory drives. Ask yourself, which aspects of my life feel like authentic expression and which feel like adaptation? Where am I living from my true nature and where am I performing for approval? The conscious victor emerges through this discernment and the choices that flow from it, not victorious over others, but over unconsciousness, not winning against external forces, but integrating internal ones. This victory manifests as particular qualities: presence rather than distraction, response rather than reaction, creation rather than consumption, connection rather than transaction. These qualities emerge not through rigid discipline, but through ongoing integration, through bringing consciousness to what was unconscious, acceptance to what was rejected, wholeness to what was fragmented. The power of acting as if becomes not just psychological but neurological. Your brain doesn't distinguish between vivid internal experience and external reality. When you embody your integrated self, your nervous system responds as if that self is already fully realized. This embodiment creates a positive feedback loop. Acting from integration creates results that reinforce integration. Speaking from authenticity elicits responses that support authenticity. Living from wholeness attracts experiences that enhance wholeness. The external world becomes a mirror, reflecting your internal integration. What if I told you that acting like you've already won creates the very conditions that make victory possible, not through magical thinking, but through psychological alignment? This alignment isn't about perfection, but congruence. Not flawlessness, but integrity. Not achieving some ideal state, but expressing your actual nature with increasing completeness. The transformation from fragmentation to integration, from division to wholeness, from unconsciousness to consciousness, isn't instantaneous. It unfolds over time through consistent awareness, acceptance, and embodiment. This gradual nature explains why sustainable transformation rarely comes through dramatic interventions alone. The breakthrough insight must be followed by consistent integration for lasting change to occur. The practical steps toward this integration are simple but profound. Notice without judgment, accept without condition, express with authenticity, release with trust. These steps create a rhythm of consciousness that gradually transforms your relationship with yourself, with others, with life itself. The liberation that comes through this transformation isn't freedom from all limitation, but freedom to be fully yourself within necessary boundaries. Not escape from reality, but expanded capacity to engage with it authentically. This engagement creates a particular quality of aliveness, an intensity of presence, a depth of experience, a richness of meaning that transcends conventional notions of happiness or success. The moment you realize that the victory you seek isn't about conquering the world, but about coming home to yourself, is the moment everything changes. Jung recognized that this homecoming, this return to your authentic self, isn't regression but completion, not retreat, but fulfillment. Not withdrawal from life, but fuller participation in it. The conscious victor doesn't win through domination, but through integration, not by defeating others, but by unifying the divided aspects of the self, not through power over but power with. This integration transforms how you engage with challenge. Obstacles become opportunities for growth rather than threats to avoid. Conflicts become invitations to deeper understanding rather than battles to win. Differences become sources of expansion rather than reasons for division. These transformations occur not through forced positivity, but through psychological wholeness, through including what was excluded, acknowledging what was denied, reclaiming what was disowned. The practical expression of this wholeness isn't perfection but authenticity. Not getting everything right, but being genuinely yourself in each situation. Not performing flawlessly, but responding truthfully. This authenticity creates trust with yourself and with others. Not because you're perfect, but because you're real. Not because you're flawless, but because you're integrated. The truth is that people trust not those who appear perfect, but those who are authentically themselves, with all their strengths and limitations, capabilities and vulnerabilities. This trust forms the foundation for genuine connection, meaningful work, lasting impact. Not despite your humanity, but because of it. Not through hiding imperfections, but through integrating them into a more complete expression of who you are. The call to introspection that Jung emphasized isn't self-absorption, but self-knowledge in service of more authentic engagement with life. Not withdrawal, but preparation for fuller participation. This introspection involves specific practices, regular reflection on your reactions, patterns, and assumptions, honest examination of the gap between your values and your behaviors, curious exploration of your dreams, associations, and imaginations, courageous confrontation with what you've been avoiding. These practices aren't ends in themselves, but means to greater consciousness, integration, and authenticity. The transformation these practices facilitate isn't just personal, it contributes to collective evolution. As Jung observed, the only way the world changes is through transformed individuals, not through ideology, but through consciousness, not through force, but through integration. Your individual journey of becoming whole thus serves something larger than yourself, not as sacrifice, but as authentic contribution, not as duty, but as natural expression of your integrated being. Ask yourself, what becomes available to the world when you're no longer divided against yourself? What contribution emerges when you're fully aligned with your authentic nature? The redemptive perspective on past struggles transforms not just how you see your history, but how you engage with present challenges. What once seemed like obstacles become recognized as necessary steps in your evolution. This perspective isn't mere reframing, it's profound psychological integration that transforms your relationship with difficulty itself. Not through denial, but through expanded consciousness that includes both the challenge and its purpose in your development. The practical pathway toward this integration involves specific psychological moves, from judgment to curiosity about your patterns, from resistance to acceptance of what is, from fragmentation to wholeness through integration, from unconscious reaction to conscious response. These moves aren't techniques but expressions of evolving consciousness, natural manifestations of increased awareness, acceptance, and integration. The power of acting as if you've already won creates both psychological and neurological conditions for genuine transformation. By embodying your future self now, you create the internal environment for that self to emerge naturally. This isn't pretense but prototype. Not fake it till you make it, but embody it till you become it. Not self-deception, but self-direction, through conscious embodiment of your integrated potential. What if I told you that victory isn't something to achieve in the future, but something to embody in the present, not through denial of current reality, but through alignment with your deeper nature? This embodiment happens through conscious choice in ordinary moments, choosing presence when you would typically disconnect, expressing truth when you would usually accommodate, setting boundaries when you would normally please, taking meaningful risks when you would characteristically play safe. These choices may seem small, but they create the conditions for significant transformation over time, not through dramatic revolution, but through consistent evolution toward greater consciousness and integration. The transformation from fragmentation to wholeness isn't just psychological, it's energetic. The energy previously consumed by inner conflict becomes available for creation, connection, contribution. This explains why psychological integration often coincides with increased vitality, creativity, and impact. Not because you're doing more, but because you're being more wholly yourself in what you do. The conscious victor understands that true winning isn't about external achievements, but internal alignment. Not about having more, but being whole. Not about receiving recognition, but offering authentic contribution. This understanding transforms ambition from compensatory drive to genuine expression, from trying to fill a lack to expressing an abundance, from seeking completion through achievement to creating from wholeness. The moment you stop trying to win in order to feel whole and start creating from the wholeness you already possess is the moment everything changes. Jung observed that neurosis, psychological suffering, results from living a life too small for the soul, from identifying with only certain aspects of yourself while denying others, from adapting to external expectations while suppressing authentic impulses. The remedy isn't adjustment to these constraints, but expansion beyond them through psychological integration, through reclaiming the disowned aspects of yourself, both shadow and gold. This integration leads not to perfect harmony, but to creative tension, to holding the polarities of your nature in dynamic balance rather than eliminating them through compromise. The practical expression of this integration manifests as particular qualities: authenticity rather than performance, response rather than reaction, creation rather than consumption, connection rather than transaction. These qualities emerge naturally from increased psychological wholeness, from the integration of conscious and unconscious, personal and collective, individual and archetypal dimensions of your psyche. The liberation that comes through this integration isn't freedom from all limitation, but freedom to be fully yourself within necessary boundaries, not escape from reality, but expanded capacity to engage with it authentically. The truth is that acting like you've already won means embodying the freedom, authenticity, and wholeness that already exist within you, waiting to be recognized and expressed. This recognition creates the foundation for genuine transformation, not through adding something new, but through acknowledging what already exists beneath the adaptations, compensations, and protective layers. The call to introspection that leads to this recognition isn't mere self-examination, but invitation to self-realization, to becoming consciously what you've always been essentially, not creating something new, but uncovering what's been present all along. This uncovering happens through specific psychological territories, confronting your shadows, the aspects of yourself you've denied or rejected, differentiating from collective expectations that don't align with your authentic nature, integrating the contrasexual aspects of your psyche, the anima in men, the animus in women, encountering the self, the organizing center of your psyche beyond the ego. Traversing these territories doesn't guarantee comfort, but does ensure growth, not despite challenges, but through them. Not by avoiding difficulty, but by engaging with it consciously. The redemptive perspective on past struggles emerges from this conscious engagement. Your history isn't something to escape, but something to integrate into a larger narrative of becoming. Not a liability, but a foundation. Not something to overcome, but something to include. This integration transforms not just how you see your past, but how you engage with your present and future. The past becomes wisdom rather than wound. The present becomes opportunity rather than obligation. The future becomes possibility rather than pressure. These shifts create an expanded sense of time, where each moment contains both memory and potential, both history and possibility. Ask yourself, what aspects of my past am I still treating as obstacles rather than foundations? What struggles am I still trying to escape rather than integrate? The conscious victor understands that true winning isn't about achieving particular outcomes, but about engaging authentically with the process. Not about reaching destinations, but about being fully present for the journey. Not about accumulating experiences, but about experiencing fully what already is. This understanding transforms how you relate to achievement itself, from desperate seeking to natural expression, from trying to become complete through accomplishment to expressing your inherent completeness through contribution. The practical pathway toward this shift involves specific practices. Regular reflection on your patterns, reactions, and assumptions. Honest examination of the gap between your values and your behaviors. Curious exploration of your dreams, associations, and imaginations. Courageous confrontation with what you've been avoiding. These practices create the conditions for increased consciousness, integration, and authenticity, not through forced change, but through natural evolution, guided by awareness. The power of acting as if you've already won creates both psychological and neurological conditions for genuine transformation. By embodying your future self now, you create the internal environment for that self to emerge naturally. This embodiment isn't about pretending to be something you're not, but about recognizing and expressing what you already are beneath the adaptations, compensations, and protective layers. What if I told you that the victory you seek has already happened, not in external achievement, but in the simple fact of your existence as a unique expression of consciousness? This recognition transforms the very nature of striving, from desperate attempt to become whole through achievement to natural expression of your inherent wholeness through contribution. The call to action that completes this journey isn't about doing more, but about being more fully yourself in what you do. Not about adding to your life, but about removing what obscures your authentic expression. Not about becoming someone new, but about uncovering who you've always been. This uncovering happens through conscious choice in ordinary moments. Choosing presence when you would typically disconnect, expressing truth when you would usually accommodate, setting boundaries when you would normally please, taking meaningful risks when you would characteristically play safe. These choices create the conditions for your authentic self to emerge and express, not through dramatic revolution, but through consistent evolution toward greater consciousness and integration. The transformation from fragmentation to wholeness, from division to integration, from unconsciousness to consciousness, isn't just personal, it contributes to collective evolution. As Jung observed, the only way the world changes is through transformed individuals. Your individual journey of becoming whole thus serves something larger than yourself, not as sacrifice, but as authentic contribution, not as duty, but as natural expression of your integrated being. The truth is that acting like you've already won isn't about pretending, it's about recognizing the victory that already exists within you, waiting to be claimed through consciousness and expressed through authentic action. Take that next step now, not tomorrow or next week, or when conditions seem perfect, but in this moment, through one conscious choice that aligns with your authentic nature, one expression that reflects your true values, one action that embodies who you're becoming. This choice, this expression, this action might seem small, but it contains the seed of everything, because transformation doesn't happen someday in some dramatic moment. It happens now, in ordinary moments approached with extraordinary consciousness. The journey continues, but it continues differently when approached with awareness, with acceptance, with authenticity, when you act like you've already won the only victory that truly matters, the victory of becoming consciously, authentically, wholly yourself.